You know, there's a specific kind of romantic ghost that I think haunts almost everyone. I'm not talking about the ex you had a messy broke up with or the high school sweetheart you just grew apart from. I'm talking about the almost.
The what if?
Exactly. The what if, the person you met for a weekend, the stranger on a train, that summer romance that you knew had an expiration date from day one.
Right.
And usually we look back on those moments with this sense of loss. We see them as failures because they didn't end in a 50-year marriage.
We're conditioned to.
We are. We think, oh, if only I'd said something, or if only the timing had been different. But today, I want to challenge that whole idea. What if the almost isn't a failure at all? What if the fact that it ended is exactly what makes it perfect?
That's a really provocative idea.
Hmm.
I mean, we're so trained by everything to measure a relationship success by how long it lasts, the anniversary.
Diamond anniversary, yeah.
But if you measure it by its intensity or by how much it changes you, a 7-day relationship can sometimes be more important than a 7-year one.
That is the exact vibe we are channeling today. We're doing a deep dive into a collection of short love stories. It's called Whispers of the Shape of Love by Abdullah Al-Khalifa. It's an ebook, and it's all about these quiet, introspective moments. But we're not going to try to cover the whole book. We are laser focusing on one story that I think is just a masterclass in this whole philosophy. It's called The Last Sunset in Santorini.
And this story is fascinating because it's not just a romance. It's almost a psychological study of what it means to be present. It's about two people who make a very controversial choice, at least by today's standards. They choose the memory over the reality.
Okay, so let's set the stage. The source material takes us back to a very specific time. We're in the summer of the year 2000.
And that date is so crucial to understanding why they do what they do.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it for a second. No smartphones, no Instagram, no way to check in on Facebook. If you were somewhere, you were just there. You couldn't be anywhere else digitally.
Yeah. It completely changes the dynamic of travel. Today, if you go to Greece, you're sort of performing the trip for your friends back home. You're curating a feed.
Oh, 100%.
But in 2000, travel was a form of disappearance. You were just off the grid. And that's where we find our two main characters, Daniel and Yasmin.
Okay, so let's break them down. Who are we dealing with here?
So first, there's Daniel. He's a university student from Canada, and he's about to go into his final year. The text gives us this really clear picture of him. He is terrified of the monotony of routine.
I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah. He sees graduation coming, and it's like a life sentence to a cubicle. So he's in Santorini looking for vitality. He wants to feel something real before life goes gray.
That quarter-life crisis panic. I get it. Okay, and on the other side of the equation, we have Yasmin.
Yasmin. She's a literature enthusiast from Lebanon, traveling with her cousin, and it's her first time in Europe. If Daniel is searching for an external feeling, she's all about internal expansion. And the detail that really defines her is this prop she carries everywhere, a journal.
Yes, I loved that detail in the text. It says she fills it with thoughts in faded blue ink. It just feels so tangible, so analog.
It tells you she's an observer, right?
Yeah.
She processes the world by writing it down. So you have Daniel, who wants to live the moment, and Yasmin, who wants to understand it.
And of course, they collide. Literally, it's the classic meet cute.
It is. Day 3, quaint little boutique, and they both reach for the same pair of sunglasses.
Now, normally, a setup that's cinematic would make me roll my eyes a little bit.
Sure.
But the author, Al-Khalifa, uses it to show how they're on the same wavelength immediately. They laugh. And the text says that laughter connected them for the next 7 days. It wasn't just politeness, it was like recognition.
And this kicks off what psychologists sometimes call the stranger on a train phenomenon.
Right. Tell us about that.
It's this well-documented effect where you're often more honest, more open with a stranger you know you'll never see again than with your closest friends. There are no stakes. They don't know your baggage or your past failures. You can be the version of yourself you want to be.
That is exactly what happens here. They spend the next week basically attached at the hip. But they aren't doing touristy things, they're doing human things. The source lists these amazing sensory details, dancing at taverns, eating gelato under the stars. But what really got me was the cultural exchange.
It's a beautiful contrast, isn't it? Daniel talks about his snow-covered hometown in Canada, this idea of stillness, cold, preservation, and Yasmin counters with Beirut's warm sea history, chaos, heat. And Santorini acts as this neutral ground. It's what we call a liminal space.
A liminal space. What's
It's a threshold, like an airport or a hotel lobby. It's a space that's not your past and it's not your future. It's just in between.
Good.
The normal rules of your life don't apply there. Snow and sand can exist in the same story. That's where their relationship lives.
So they watch the sunset melt into the agency every night. It sounds perfect. But we have to talk about the conflict. Because usually in a romantic story, the conflict is, I don't know, a misunderstanding or an ex shows up. Here, the villain is just reality.
It's the constraints of the real world. Internally, they feel this rare spark, this feeling of completeness, which is a really heavy word to use after a few days. But externally, they're doomed, different worlds, different cultures, different futures, and the biggest antagonist all time.
Just 7 days. That's barely enough time to learn someone's middle name.
Well, yes and no. This brings up the idea of scarcity value in a relationship. The relationship felt so infinite because it was finite. If they lived in the same city and had all the time in the world, would they have had those deep, soul-bearing conversations on night two?
Probably not, no.
Well,
They'd be talking about what to watch on TV or complaining about their roommates.
exactly. The deadline forces you to skip the small talk. When you know the clock is ticking, you don't waste time on the trivial, you go straight for the important stuff. It's like a pressure cooker for intimacy.
Wow. So the deadline actually made the connection stronger. That's wild.
Yeah.
But the clock does eventually run out.
Which brings us to the climax of the story, the final night. And the scene is written with so much restraint, which I really appreciate. There's no big dramatic fight, no running through an airport. They're just sitting on a cliff, shoulder to shoulder. The sun is setting for the last time.
And Daniel breaks the silence. He says, maybe in another life.
Such a heavy phrase. It's an admission of defeat in this life, but it holds out this hope for some other cosmic alignment. He knows the logistics are impossible.
But Yasmin's response is what really captures the story's whole philosophy. She's smiling, even though her eyes are misty, and she says, or perhaps this moment is all we need.
And that's the thesis statement right there. She's rejecting the whole narrative that a relationship needs to be permanent to be valid. She's saying that this week, this connection, this feeling is a complete story in itself. It doesn't need a sequel to have value.
And then they do something that I would think will frustrate a lot of people listening. It definitely frustrated me at first. They decide to just stop. No phone numbers, no addresses, no promises to write letters. The text says they both believed that forcing a connection would tarnish the beauty of what they had experienced.
Okay, but I have to push back on that. Isn't that just fear? Isn't that cowardice disguised as something poetic? Why not at least try?
It's a really valid question, especially for us today, where you can find anyone on social media in 5 seconds. It seems absurd to just let someone go. But think about the reality of 2000. A long-distance relationship meant incredibly expensive phone calls. It meant waiting for a dial-up email you checked once a day. It meant the slow, painful drift of fading away.
So they were afraid the mundane details would kill the magic.
Precisely. By walking away at the absolute peak, they preserve that memory perfectly. If they had tried to make it work, eventually they'd argue about money or whose turn it is to fly across the ocean. The Santorini week would have just become the prologue to a messy breakup. By ending it there, the Santorini week is the entire story. It gets to stay perfect forever.
It's a radical act of preservation, like romantic discipline, I think we called it in our notes. It is discipline. It's choosing the perfection of the past over the potential messiness of the future. It's understanding that possession isn't the only way to love someone.
So they part ways. The story says they were two souls forever transformed by a love that arrived like a wave and departed like a gentle breeze. But it doesn't end there. We get a flash forward. What happens to them?
And this is so important because it answers your question about whether this was a tragedy, and it wasn't. Daniel goes back to Santorini years later, but he's not alone. He's with his wife and his kids.
I love that detail. He didn't just pine away for 20 years. He lived his life.
He lived a full life, but he goes back to that same cliff. He closes his eyes, and the text says he feels the warmth of a distant summer.
It's not a wound. It doesn't hurt him. It's a source of warmth. He integrated that memory into the man he became.
And Yasmin?
Yasmin is back in Beirut. She pulls out that old journal with the faded blue ink, and we get to read the words she wrote back then. It's a line that I think is going to stick with people. She wrote, "He was my favorite almost." He was my favorite almost. Wow. That hits you right in the chest.
It really does, and she follows it up with this. Some stories aren't meant to be completed. They're meant to be felt.
That's such a validation of short-term connections, isn't it? It validates the summer fling, the conference romance, the person you met studying abroad. It's telling you you didn't fail just because you didn't marry them.
Exactly. The author, Abdullah al-Khalifa, seems to be pushing against what you could call the ownership model of love. The idea that to love someone is to possess them, to lock them down. He's proposing more of an experiential model. You experience the person, you learn from them, and then you let them go.
The source actually has a specific moral about this. It says, some loves are not destined to endure. They are meant to teach us.
Hmm.
So what do you think they taught each other?
I think they unlocked parts of themselves that were just dormant. Daniel was looking for vitality, and he found it. He learned he was capable of that deep passion. That probably made him a better husband and father later on. He learned he wasn't just a cog in a machine.
And for Yasmin,
She wanted to see the world, and she learned she could connect with someone from a completely different culture, a different hemisphere. She proved to herself that the heart can blossom in unexpected places. They were catalysts for each other's lives, not the destinations.
it reminds me of that idea of a change agent. Sometimes a person comes into your life just to pivot you a few degrees in a new direction, and then their job is done.
That's it exactly, and if you try to hold on to that change agent, you can ruin the new trajectory. You stunt your own growth. The story's final lesson is really liberating. Not every love requires eternity. Some simply need a moment, and that is sufficient.
That is sufficient. We are so bad at knowing when something is enough. We always want more time, more years. But maybe we should just be grateful for the moment we got.
It completely changes how you view your own history.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing your past relationships as a museum of failures, you can see them as completed chapters. They did what they were meant to do.
I just keep going back to that favorite almost line. There's a real sweetness in the almost.
Yeah.
It leaves room for your imagination.
That's the key, imagination. Because they never saw each other again, Daniel remains perfect in her mind. He never chewed with his mouth open. He never forgot her birthday. He's frozen in time as that charming student in the Santorini sunset.
It's the difference between a painting and a photograph.
Yes, a photograph shows you all the flaws, the bad lighting. A painting captures the essence, the feeling. They chose to keep the painting.
And this story, The Last Sunset in Santorini, it's just one piece of this whole collection, Whispers of the Shape of Love. The entire book seems to operate on this frequency.
The source material describes the book as being about love that lingers, love that waits, and love that changes us softly. I really like that word, softly. Real change isn't always a car crash. Sometimes it's just a gentle breeze that shifts your sails.
For anyone listening who feels like they need a break from all the noise, from the dating apps that gamify connection, this book really seems like a sanctuary. It's available as an ebook, and honestly, it sounds like required reading for anyone who has a what-if person in their past.
It's for anyone who wants to understand the quiet parts of their own heart. For people who value the silence just as much as the conversation.
As we wrap this up, I'm just struck by the courage it took for them to walk away. We always think of fighting for love as the brave thing to do.
Right, the grand gesture.
Yeah, the run through the airport, the boombox over the head. We're taught that if you really love someone, you chase them.
But sometimes letting go is the ultimate act of love. By letting go, you're refusing to let this beautiful thing be diminished by the grind of everyday life. You're protecting it. You're honoring it by letting it end on a high note.
That's a really powerful reframing. So Daniel and Yasmin aren't broken people because they didn't end up together. They are expanded people.
Forever transformed, as the text says.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with today. We spend so much energy trying to move on from the past, trying to close doors, to forget. But this story suggests that maybe we don't ever really leave the past behind. Daniel carries that summer with him. Yasmin carries that journal. So if a memory stays with you for a lifetime, is it really in the past? Or does the fact that it remains unfinished make it the only thing that actually lasts forever?
That is something worth thinking about.
Huge thanks for diving deep with us today. Check out Whispers of the Shape of Love, available now as an ebook, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.